The reason I went to jail, the charge I was charged with, I was innocent. There never, ever, ever was any sense between Barbara and I, period.
This is Christine Weston Chandler, the creator of the webcomic Sonichu, a combination of Sonic the Hedgehog and Pikachu, who spent years at the receiving end of non-stop internet trolling. After transitioning into a woman, Christine found herself the target of a particularly nasty group called the Idea Guys, who helped put the notion into her head that all fictional characters exist together in another dimension, and that she was the goddess who would one day merge that reality with her own. As she fell deeper into these delusions with the help of a woman named Isabella Loretta Jenke, things became infinitely worse when Christine was arrested for allegedly having relations with her own mother. At least that's a condensed version of events. Many people at the time believed that this is where the story would end, with her behind bars. But after nearly 2 years in jail, Christine has returned to the outside world, and with her sense of reality spiraling, a vortex seems to have been created around her, warping reality and sucking anyone who gets too close into the chaos. And with that, I decided to tempt fate and travel back down to Virginia again after nearly 5 years, to reunite with the most trolled person in human history. This is the continued saga of Jesus Christ Chan Weston Chandler Sonichu Prime. Previously known as Christine Chandler, previously known as Christian Chandler, previously known as Christopher Chandler, but best known to the internet as Chris Chan. It's been 4.5 years since I originally met Chris Chan. It's my first time back in Virginia since then as well. It's crazy to think that an entire pandemic came and went, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I actually am quite nervous. It just feels like a roller coaster, like we're reaching the top of the tallest elevation, and once we meet Christine, we're gonna go for a ride. Well, it's nice to see you again, Chris Chan, Christine.
Yeah.
What's your current title?
Yeah, I prefer to go by Christ Chan these days,
Christ
or
Chan.
Christine.
Okay, sounds good. Do you have something for me?
Yeah, I give you one of the special ones that has the, flip it over.
Is this an eyeball?
No, essentially it's a megastone, but really it's a Orsphere quartz. Very, very blessed, and definitely so.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. This is awesome.
You know why they call it chicken soup for the soul?
Why?
Because chicken soup is neutral. It's a neutral good healing. I'm multi-religious. I mean, physically, I actually am about 0.01% Ashkenazi Jewish, as proven by 23andMe. My apologies for not being specific on the name, but my conscious memory, taking so much of the time, because I've clearly connected with the Akashic records and everything that is and was and will be. I've connected with the literal core and matrix of this universe, as depicted in this very center of the universe by that eye-looking thing with the star gem in the middle. I therefore knew what was going to happen, but then it did happen. I was put into jail, accused of all of those of which I was wrongfully false witness for, which obviously now, shoot. Even when you're conversing with one another, you're soul bonding that way. But if you're feeling any doubt, because demons stem from doubt. You have any doubt, those demons are going to come right into you and just affect your mind, your mindset and thinking.
That was quite this amount of information to comprehend.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I do have a few friends I talk with about that. And definitely got to plug this in, so I started doing me versus AI in the regards of a SingStar competition. A little bit better, hey, versus a computer that can replicate singing and voicing in a way, but hey, that AI cannot adjust the pitch all the way from the nose down to the deep bass of the throat. Okay. And they teach you that in voice acting and singing classes.
I don't think I've ever known that before. The events that took place between July 30th and August 2nd of 2021 were a distressing time for the Chandler family, to put it mildly. Following the release of the infamous phone conversation with Isabella Loretta Jenke, the college student who coerced Chris Chan into admitting to her alleged crime of elder abuse, police arrived at their home and informed Christine that she would have to leave. After packing up her things, she did so with surprisingly little pushback. Her first idea was to go to the nearby house of Harriet and Tom, her uncle and aunt, to see if she could stay with them until the whole thing blew over. When she arrived to find nobody home though, she opted to wait on their porch for somebody to arrive and let her in. But instead of receiving a warm welcome and a helping hand, Christine was instead visited by even more police. You see, Harriet and Tom wanted nothing to do with their niece, and had contacted authorities in order to get her off their property. If it hadn't been apparent before, this should have been the signal that Christine was well and truly alone in the world. But still, Chris Chan remained undeterred, choosing to instead stay at a Regency Inn outside of Richmond. Since she lacked the funds to pay for it though, she used Barbara's credit card to get the room. Once she was settled in, Christine began talking to a few of her online acquaintances in order to figure out what would be her next step. Chief among these was Null, owner of Kiwi Farms, who called the disgraced comic artist in disbelief over the recent revelations. According to Christine, he told her, "You've really done it this time, Chris. You've blown it." Chris Chan simply responded, "Did I though?" You probably know how the story progressed from here. On August 1st, Chris Chan was arrested outside her hotel. While previously the only video of this event had been a live stream conducted by Ethan Ralph, police body cam footage was later released, which gave a much more close and personal angle of what went down.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Christine Chandler.
Okay, can you come out for a second?
What's the situation?
What's that? You got a warrant for your arrest, all right? Yep. Yep.
Okay.
You're not gonna start. You're not gonna do that. You're not fight. You will get tased.
Okay, well, listen, I will comply, but I'd like to clear up I'd like to come back for my things.
In the original live stream, it was clear to see that Christine was in shockingly high spirits considering her situation, but this updated perspective painted a much bleaker picture. While yes, Chris Chan did comply with all the officer's demands, she seemed so detached from reality as to not fully be able to comprehend what was going on. She very frankly told the present authorities that her husband, Maji-chan Sonichu, was in the room with them and didn't seem to realize at all how strange that would sound.
By the way, if any of y'all has been feeling a punch-like sensation on your leg, that is my husband, Maji-chan Sonichu, right on the opposite side of the universe field. He's punching you all each, just a gentle punch, but you know he is here.
Okay.
Did you feel it? He punched you first.
Yeah, so I didn't, but, you know.
Much more, hubby.
Christine also sounded incredibly concerned about what would become of her possessions, specifically her Sonichu medallion, which she insisted she needed to wear once being transferred to jail and likened it to a religious relic. After that, she was led out of the hotel room to the waiting cop car, giving us the footage that has since gone viral. This would be the last thing many people saw or heard from the internet personality for a very long time, and many assumed it would be the end of the ongoing public saga of her life altogether. The Sonichu creator was not completely isolated though. Following the transfer to the Central Virginia Regional Jail, she was visited by her pastoral counselor, Rocky Shoemaker, who had remained loyal to the Chandler family through thick and thin. But even with barely a friend left in the world, Christine never believed she was truly alone. Thanks to her ever-worsening delusions, she was able to imagine Maji-chan Sonichu by her side at all times. When Shoemaker came to visit her in jail, she played along, pretending to be able to see the magical hedgehog standing in the room with them. It can be argued whether this sort of behavior only served to enable Christine's worsening mental state, but at this point, most people believed she was too far gone to be saved. This was her reality now, and there was no going back. Even with her boundless imagination to keep her company, though, the isolation was clearly getting to Chris Chan. She had spent the last 20-odd years of her life able to express her thoughts to a wide audience of people on the World Wide Web who listened to every word, as ironic as their enjoyment may have been. She needed an outlet to express herself, even if the only person who could read it was her. After a few nights behind bars, she grabbed a pen and paper and began keeping a detailed diary of her experiences behind bars. This diary, which we have been given full exclusive access to, was simply titled The Goddess Logs.
Finally able to resume after the big gamble's result. As foreseen, I was arrested. I played it honest and natural because I was counting and appreciating my blessings. I did not fight, argue, or yell at the police. I happily complied, as I have foreseen for the long run and bigger picture, for I, and the collectives between both universe halves, this particular outcome, and I had my choices. I felt this was the safest and most healing for I and everyone.
In the beginning, Christine sounded very much at peace with her current situation. Perhaps this was because of her confidence that she would soon be released due to the imminent completion of the dimensional merge. But that confidence was shaken on August 5th, when Christine attended her first bond hearing alongside her court-appointed lawyer David Hallberg.
The bond was denied for now, due to the minority number of fakers and haters among my flock and followers of the collective.
At least, that's what Chris Chan said in the pages of the Goddess Logs. According to a reporter who attended the hearing, though, the Sonichu artist repeatedly interrupted the proceedings even after being asked not to by both the judge and her attorney. Among these outbursts were multiple instances of Christine demanding her belongings from the hotel room be returned to her, claiming she wouldn't feel safe until she had them. In addition, she also derailed the hearing with a seeming non sequitur in which she announced she was famous on the internet. With her hopes of achieving freedom anytime soon destroyed, Christine returned to her cell with a new sense of loneliness. Christine's access to the outside world was not completely cut off, though. Despite the fact that she was unable to use the internet, she soon discovered that she was able to make contact with people the old-fashioned way, through the mail. The first of these jail letters was sent to an unknown recipient, but was intended as a message for Null. The bulk of it was Christine continuing to insist on her divine abilities and the coming of the dimensional merge, giving the public the best glimpse into her psyche that they had gotten in weeks.
I am literally the real player one, the one avatar. And this body, eyes, mind, and all is the one God body, and I am literally also Jesus Christ himself, fully reincarnated and fully reawakened. Feel free to take any unaltered original photograph of my body's face, neck, and shoulder/chest area where I was not wearing the glasses. Then alter the photo to show a naturally growing brown beard, mustache, and sideburns. Now place that photo next to any image of Jesus on or off the cross. Compare. Look deep into my eyes and photograph. See for yourself.
In addition, Chris Chan also took the opportunity to further explain her relationship with Barbara according to her new extension of Christianity.
Emmanuel, God above all other gods and goddesses and one of my mentors, herself has deemed me to heal, cleanse, and clear Barbara of all of her past sins and regrets, and improve her abilities directly and personally as her goddess. We mainly cuddled, soul-bonded, and talked. Consentful and emotionally and mentally supportive and healing. I did as I had done for and with a chosen few back in Israel over 2,000 years ago in cleansing them.
Presumably, this was intended as a denial of ever having sex with her mother, but it's hard to discern exactly what she was trying to say due to it being written in that unique Chris Chan dialect. The same soul-bonding excuse is repeated within the Goddess Logs as well, so that seemed to be the story she was sticking with for the time being, but more on that later. Christine sent out many of these letters during her time incarcerated. Some of them were to legitimate fans, some to trolls, but nearly all of them filled to the brim with these bizarre religious scrawls. Another noteworthy example of these communications included Christine's take on Christianity and Islam.
The Quran is literally all over the place. Not to offend nor make jest, but there's only some new insights and takes heavily from the Bible. The Quran is to the Bible as Family Guy is to The Simpsons.
She also made multiple references comparing Null and Judas, continuing the theme of her being the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. Strangely, there are multiple letters in which Christine asks who would be the better kisser between Null and Judas, and to this day nobody can quite figure out why she was so fixated on that question. These letters weren't Chris Chan's only human interactions during this time, though. Throughout the Goddess Logs, she wrote about her troubles dealing with her fellow inmates.
A real wildcard aggressive human named Charlie Sprouse constantly bangs on his cell door at least 10 times, yelling rooster noises and whatnot, not pace-bringing at all.
Christine wrote about this individual frequently in her diary, as Charlie was apparently a constant source of annoyance for her. She similarly wrote about someone only referred to as Ramos, who was guilty of making a similar amount of noise. There was also a third unnamed inmate described only as the possessed screaming lady, who Christine claimed made a massive poop mess all over her cell, requiring the writer to wear a mask just to block out the odor. But fellow arrestees weren't the only people causing Chris Chan distress. As her incarceration continued on far longer than she had anticipated, she began to yearn for the attention of her online audience. She got into multiple arguments with guards, demanding to have her technology returned to her and threatening to curse them with severe flatulence if they didn't comply.
Anyone who attempts to deny Christine and/or body of their technology, internet, and phone shall each fall immediately with heavy gases and fall spontaneously. Praise Jesus Christ, Chan Sonichu.
This gas-related threat is something repeated quite often within the goddess logs. While this by itself may have been just an amusing anecdote, things got significantly darker on September 8th, when Christine was temporarily transferred to a much smaller, windowless cell within the jail's mental health wing, after allegedly claiming she would take her own life if her internet access wasn't restored. Based on her wording, it's unclear if she ever actually intended to go through with such an act, but jail officials were forced to take it seriously regardless. This would be the last time Chris Chan attempted to use such an extreme method to get what she wanted, but it was far from the last example of her ever deteriorating mental health. As you may recall, around 2020 there was a long stretch during which Christine claimed to have swapped bodies with her character Sonichu. At the time, it seemed like just another personality quirk of the internet's most beloved lolcow. But in jail, it turned into another one of her many self-destructive coping mechanisms. As weeks turned to months, with release nowhere in sight, Chris Chan began claiming that more and more spirits from other universes were possessing her body while her true soul traveled to Quickfill in order to oversee the dimensional merge. It started with her fictional spouses Kryzel and Magic-chan before expanding to a whole host of other Sonichu characters. Religious figures also soon entered the fray, such as the goddess Emmanuel and Jesus Christ himself. It's unclear how he was able to possess Christine when she had previously asserted herself to already be Jesus Christ reincarnated, but I digress. Another interesting detail stated frequently within the goddess logs is that Christopher, Christian, and Christine, the three names that Chris Chan has legally gone by over the course of their life, are all stated to be separate entities within her mind. Christopher and Christian never actually gain control of her body, and it's highly unlikely that this will ever make complete sense to anyone other than the creator of Sonichu herself, but it's one of the more thought-provoking insights offered from the pages of this diary. Of all the dozens of characters to pilot Christine's body during her stint in jail, there was one that stands out amongst the crowd: Ember McLean. Fans of the cartoon Danny Phantom will recognize the name as a reoccurring character from the show, but for scholars of internet-related degeneracy, it takes on a whole new meaning. What must be understood is that Ember was the favorite character of Randy Stair, a transgender Danny Phantom-obsessed youth who went on a killing spree in the name of his favorite TV program in Tunkhannock, Pennsylvania. In the past, Chris Chan has not shown any particular fondness for Danny Phantom, and Ember is such a niche and obscure character from the series that the odds of the Sonichu artist choosing to roleplay her by pure coincidence are slim. Interestingly, around the same time that this cartoon character became a regular part of Christine's roster of alternate personas, audio she had recorded in November of 2020 leaked which depicted her channeling the spirit of Randy Stair.
Anyway, she's in this body with me, so I'm gonna let her speak now. This is Randy Stair, Andrew Blaze.
This is not the only time Chris Chan has shown interest in the mass shooter. Again, in November of 2020, she had discovered a now-deleted documentary series from a creator named Sean Walker, otherwise known as The Wildcat, who himself was also quite fascinated by the killer. The two eventually got into communication, bonding over their shared interest in engaging in Randy Stair-related roleplay together. It's important to note that Christine's curiosity about the murderer came not from his crimes, but from their similar beliefs that fictional characters existed within their own alternate dimension. While the general belief amongst Christorians is that the Wildcat was just another troll trying to mess with Christine's head, there are some who believe him to be just as delusional as she is. In fact, Walker was one of the people trying to help Christine by convincing her to cut ties with Isabella Janke after the phone call leak. Chris Chan and Sean Walker have not been in contact since the arrest, making yet another person she viewed as a friend who she would never see again.
Now we are headed over to a park of some sort, so we're just following the car that says Sonichu on it. Oh, geez.
I got two.
You got 2 phones.
I got 2 phones. One for the trolls and one for my homes. I got 2 phones. One for the boys and one for my friends. You think I need 2 phones? I'm so popular. Ring, 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 ring.
Very good.
Let's be on this right now. We're getting a feel of my energy, and I'm getting a feel of your energy.
Are you able to heal people through touch still?
Yeah, just like I was able to do with your cameraman earlier. I'm gonna just temporarily shift you to the red.
Okay.
You feel a sting?
A little bit.
As far as everybody knows, I'm living here by myself. I'm taking care of the bills and everything. Let's just say I do have somebody that helps me with the tax details. But aside from that, I'm decent. I'm good.
So how was your experience in jail for all that time?
Very meditative. I was really able to just disconnect from the technology and internet and whatnot during the time. Really found myself, and that's the thing on developing your personal maturity. You soul search.
So a question that I had is, you got out on bail. Were you able to get out on bail at any time if someone bailed you out?
I'm not sure. I don't think that if I remember correctly, I don't believe that was an option. Or, yeah, this is obviously circumstance. Didn't really have anybody at the time, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, obviously I'm using a Seinfeld reference, yada, yada, yada. So here's my paraphrasing from this first Seinfeld movie. So, as I crashed into the cold, dark waters of the Atlantic, I realized a few things. A, I know where I'm going, but I only have some idea how to get there. B, saltwater stings, but I can swim. And C, I shouldn't even be here right now, but I am. Why? Because they betrayed me! They betrayed me! And I still don't know whether or not who was the better kisser, Miss Bear Kisser, Josh Moon or Judas Iscariot.
Yeah, I know you have said that Josh Moon is a reincarnation of Judas. Do you still stand by that?
I did not say it was a reincarnation of Judas. I just like, the comparison.
Okay, sounds
anyway,
good. When did you end up getting back in touch with her? Were you allowed to right after you got out of jail?
Yeah, obviously, yes, after that.
And the charges were dropped?
Yes. And to make this clear, I never, ever wished for Barbara's death. I never, ever did that. I was making it on the general preliminary line on, either during the near future or just like years in the future when that would happen with Barbara, but I never ever wished for it, period.
You say on this timeline what you were arrested for didn't happen. On another timeline, did it happen?
That would be a remotely distant one. The effect that it came about from the manifestation from Bella's mind when she came up with that roleplay fan fiction, for one thing, and also that was among the shipping fanfics from among the mixed fans I have. That came about even years before that.
So there is a timeline, but you've never been on that timeline.
That's
before?
right. We were never on that timeline.
Okay, just making sure. A lot of people have that question of if that timeline ever merged because during the interdimensional merge or something along those lines.
Yeah, obviously, as you can look up online, and they ask any psychic, the timeline does shift here and there, sometimes crossing into other timelines, but it did not cross into that. And the only way it did that, it was through Bella at that point.
Whatever court order that had previously prevented them from interacting was lifted roughly a month after the arrest, allowing the mother and daughter to speak over the phone on September 28th before visiting in person about a week later. While this should have been a monumental moment for both of them as they were finally able to reconcile with such a life-altering event, Christine devoted very little attention to these conversations in the goddess logs, with her primary concerns seeming to be the status of her belongings.
Well, it finally happened. Barbara has come to visit. I believe from Barbara's trip to Henrico Jail and Regency Inn, Christine's 2 phones and iPad are safe at home. The video game consoles, I believe, stayed at home as well. Regardless, by heaven's armies, all that has been confiscated from the Sadachu Temple shall be immediately returned there, and the police who stole those items in their entire police station, and whoever has these items at present, shall be punished or slaughtered by heaven's soldiers.
Even knowing what we do about Chris Chan, it's still bizarre to see her far more concerned about the status of her video games than the well-being of her elderly mother who was living on her own for the first time in decades. You may have noticed that the Chandler home being referred to as the Sonichu Temple. This ties into another aspect of the Goddess Logs that we've already briefly touched upon. You see, while it's partially constructed as a jail diary, Christine seemed far more focused on writing it as something of a Bible for her new religion, dubbed Neo-Spiritual Christianity. Much of this belief system is tied in with the lore of Quickfill and the Dimensional Merge, and is thus nearly impossible for anyone but Christine or the most dedicated of Christorians to make complete sense of. Within the Goddess Logs is a list of commandments for neo-spiritual Christians to follow. In one such commandment, she claims that all forms of sex and soul bonding, including incest, were acceptable within her religion. You might recall that, while Christine vehemently denies there was ever any sexual activity between herself and Barbara, she has repeatedly described what they did as soul bonding. Since this act is classified alongside sex, this still leaves the door open for a concerning level of doubt. There are also multiple instances of Chris Chan praying throughout the Goddess Logs, specifically asking to be teleported back home to the Sonichu Temple immediately. As time went on and the self-proclaimed Messiah became more and more desperate, these prayers became increasingly unhinged. Even locked up in jail though, Chris Chan was never completely restrained. Practically every page on the Goddess Logs is filled to the brim with her experiences of astral projecting to Quickfill, in order to aid in the dimensional merge or any other multiversal problem that may arise. In her mind, she was going on boundless adventures, including every fictional character one could possibly imagine. But these tales were often juxtaposed with an account of what her physical form, referred to as a separate entity named Body, was doing during that time. This usually amounted to sitting in her cell all day while playing solitaire. No matter what she could do within her mind, that didn't change the fact that she was still locked away behind bars with no hope of leaving anytime soon. On some level, she seemed to understand that. Nevertheless, Christine kept the dream alive. Even her mundane games of solitaire soon became part of the ever-expanding lore. In the margins of the Goddess Log pages, she would occasionally write down which cards she dealt first each day, seeming to divine some sort of great cosmic significance from it. Eventually, this also extended to the numbers on her daily razors as well. It isn't as though her writings were kept exclusively to the world of fiction. Occasionally, real-world events would seep into the lore regarding Quickfill and the Dimensional Merge. For instance, there's a passage in which Chris Chan seemed to imply that the global pandemic had actually started in another timeline before infecting ours due to a curse. She also wrote frequently about the war between Russia and Ukraine, seeming to believe that the real-world attacks were causing rifts in the timeline and causing her spiritual distress. At least, that's the best I can figure it, since it can often be incredibly difficult to figure out exactly what Christine is trying to say in regards to the merge.
With my further heightened psychic senses, we ended up sensing blood pressure spikes a few times as the body suddenly literally lit up like a light bulb, and I had to consciously focus and ground myself well to hold on. As later confirmed on WTOP 107.7 FM radio news station, a rocket was fired during that time, and a literal rift and a solar storm shocked the rocket and knocked 40 satellites out of orbit into Earth's atmosphere. Yep. Another meta sign of Putin's World War III attack on Ukraine.
On November 11th, 2021, Christine once again stood before a judge for another hearing. While this ultimately ended in yet another continuance, after the fact her lawyer proposed an idea that infuriated the inmate.
I also spoke with David Hellberg. They mentioned the idea of sending me to a facility in Pennsylvania to help me. My body was all, "Hell no! Send me home to the Sonichu Temple now, or premature apocalypse!" Said that out loud to the judge as well. My body reacted and went ritualistic in the temp jail cell at Ruckersville Sheriff's Office.
This outburst seemed to make authorities believe Christine was on drugs, since upon returning to jail, she was horrified to find her cell had been thoroughly inspected and some of her belongings confiscated. Because these mainly consisted of Sonichu holy relics made from recycled paper plates and styrofoam cups, it's also highly likely that these were just mistaken for garbage and thrown away. Regardless, Christine did not respond kindly.
That bitch literally stole from God, and she's going to be majorly punished by the Heaven's Army soldiers tonight. Let all know these divine revelations and truths about me, and these present events in the loss of this one thieving jerk-op now.
At this point, it's very likely that Hallberg was beginning to grow weary of his client. Another example Christine described was an incident in which she was scolded for repeatedly signing legal documents as Chris Chan Sonichu. Unfortunately, nothing would get better from there. Christine continued writing about her delusional fantasies in the Goddess Logs on a daily basis, filling its pages with more and more troubling anecdotes. In one instance, she described having a dream in which she hooked up with one of her friends from high school, the peppermint patty type gal pal Tiffany Gowan herself. Now rapidly approaching her 40s, Chris Chan was still unable to let go of her beloved high school memories. And given the Sonichu creator's distorted view of dreams and reality, it was disturbing to see her have such specific fantasies about a person she hadn't spoken to in 20 years. She also wrote about an instance in which her various souls traveled to Quickville, causing her body to enter a comatose state for an extended period of time. Although she was probably not as unconscious as the word choice made it sound, as she also described seeing and hearing prison guards mocking her while she was out of it. In yet another incident, as her distinction between fact and fiction continued to blur, Chris Chan described a morning on which a fellow prisoner gave birth in the middle of breakfast.
This inmate's self-counterpart in C-197 was 3 months pregnant but died 6 months ago. She and the child's souls migrated here, but they both went into the baby, so the baby has 3 souls in it upon arrival. Also, with the events, demons have been scurrying the jail building. That baby arrived with a demon inside it too, and this child is literally a ticking paradox bomb not set to stick around long.
With all of these many examples in mind, it should come as no surprise that, in February of 2022, it was finally decided that Christine should be sent to a mental health facility in order to evaluate if she was fit to stand trial. However, given the generally slow nature of government bureaucracy and the ongoing pandemic, it would still be a few weeks before she could actually be transferred. In the meantime, though, things seemed to be on the upswing as the self-proclaimed Messiah actually started making some friends in jail. The first of these was a man by the name of Travis, who Christine described as Jewish and possibly autistic. Not only did Travis agree to start praying with her, but he also introduced her to the jail's kosher food option. Chris Chan preferred this greatly to the normal meal offerings, and thus requested the kosher tray from that point onward, citing her 0.01% Jewish genetics as to why she would qualify. Christine also mentioned another friend named Carrie. While no greater details about this person is given, they stand out as one of the precious few non-hostile inmate interactions she had. At long last, on February 28, 2022, Christine Chandler was sent off for an extended stay at the Western State Hospital. Unfortunately, we have very little information regarding her experience there. What must be understood is that the Goddess Logs were written and completed in volumes, usually consisting of roughly 100 pages each. Upon the completion of a volume, Christine would pass them off to her mother for safekeeping within the Sonichu Temple. Volume 5, though, which cataloged the goddess's entire stay at the Western States, was tragically exposed to water and damaged beyond repair, thus making it lost media. From what we do know based on future Goddess Log entries, though, it's safe to say that Chris Chan did not enjoy her time there. Since we don't have much information about the Sonichu creator's life during this period, in the meantime, let's take a quick look at what was happening to the person who got her sent to prison in the first place, Isabella Loretta Jenke. After some panicked attempts to throw people off her trail following the release of the phone conversation, her identity was soon discovered and her history combed through. According to reports, she was a student at Texas Tech University, and already had a very negative reputation across campus. You see, Isabella ran a Discord server known as the Chess Club, a place where she and her friends could mock their peers and take part in any kind of degeneracy they could imagine. Some of the more heinous posts from this server have since been leaked online. Just so you're aware, Isabella alleged screen name was Red Pilled Single Dad. Many of the messages here are what you would expect to see from a group of internet edgelords. Racial slurs, transphobia, and jokes about sexual assault were all plentiful. Gore images were also spread frequently amongst them. What was a particularly disturbing running theme found in the chess club server was Isabella's penchant for abusing animals. She seemed to take great delight in speaking about how many hamsters she had killed in brutal ways. As if that weren't bad enough, there was also a cat who she allegedly overfed in order to satisfy her fetishes. The group would also use this server as a spot to organize targeted harassment against their fellow Texas Tech students, usually LGBTQ people. This actually made them the target of a Title IX investigation, although it was later dropped since the school was unable to definitively prove who was behind the accounts. This is merely a taste of the sorts of acts Isabella Janke had been accused of, although it's worth noting that the more severe allegations of abuse towards both humans and animals has not been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to be true. Texas Tech did confirm that they would be opening an investigation into her following the sheer number of reports they received, although the results are unknown. Many people speculate that Isabella has been able to avoid both the consequences of her actions and the scrutiny of the public eye due to her parents. Not only are both of them ex-military personnel, but her stepmother is a member of the Secret Service. Some have theorized that these connections have suppressed any further information about her from becoming public, but that can't be said for certain. No matter what though, these allegations will follow the young woman for the rest of her life, and will undoubtedly have a massive effect on her moving forward. So right now, we're going to have Christine over to our Airbnb. We tried to get access to her apartment, but she didn't feel comfortable with us going over there currently. We also tried to see if we could go and do a road trip to see Barb, but she didn't seem against it, but she didn't want to do it right now. So, I don't know, maybe some other time, but it's clear that she still has access to Barb. So yeah, we'll hang out here and, I don't know, just do a couple activities, hang out, maybe cook a bit, maybe draw a bit, and see where the day takes us. Hello, Christine, come right in.
Yeah, hey. Hey, viewers at home. That's a great view.
So let's see, what do you want to draw today?
I figured I'd just keep it simple. I'm going to do a simple Sonichu and Rosie drawing. Pardon me?
How many drawings of Sonichu do you think you have done at this point?
Quite the massive number. You buy something on Etsy, you're not exactly going to get the same quality twice. There's bound to be an error or two along the way.
So what percentage of your day is working on the Etsy store and doing the commissions?
Decent amount. There's outsourcing, of course. Sheesh, I make Sonichu look a little gruff looking, even from the side view.
What's still at the old house of yours? Do you still have any of the old collections?
A bunch of the old collections, yes.
When was the last time you were there visiting Barb?
Actually earlier this month. I visit once a month these days.
So what if someone wanted a Pickle Rick in a picture like this? How much extra would that cost as a commission?
Can't put a Pickle Rick in a drawing like this. It don't work.
What if someone wanted to pay a lot of money to make it happen though? Is there a price, or do you just have the artistic merit? Well, you'll never do it for $1 million.
Merit. There you are with my compliments.
Thank you very much. So you talked a bit about Andy Warhol. Do you think you're better than him? Or on the same level? What do you feel?
I'd say decently on the same level, though more socially outgoing.
Do you have limits of what you'll draw?
Yes, I do have my boundaries. Definitely nothing NSFW and no gore. I mean, just rule of thumb, if it cannot be aired on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, no.
What about Adult Swim?
Adult Swim don't count in that.
Okay. On May 3rd, 2022, Christine Weston Chandler was returned to the Central Virginia Regional Jail as she continued to await trial. Upon her arrival, a new mugshot was taken, which was immediately discovered and spread across the internet. People quickly took notice of how different she now looked compared to before her arrest. She was thinner, her eyes more sunken with dark bags underneath, and the hope and joy seemed to have been completely removed from her face. Things weren't progressing well for the Chandlers outside of jail either. Back in November of 2021, Barbara was involved in a car accident after allegedly failing to yield the right-of-way, resulting in 2 of her ribs being broken and the complete destruction of the family's van. She was ultimately found to be at fault and fined $30, as well as an additional $76 in court fees. This made many people wonder why she was still living independently. From the more recent videos of her that had been released to the public, it seemed obvious that she was not in a proper mental state to care for herself as she hit her 80s. By the time Sonichu's creator returned to jail, everyone involved seemed to wish this entire ordeal was over. Christine wanted to go home. David Halberg was clearly growing tired of dealing with this particular client, and the local government was losing patience with the dozens upon dozens of calls they received regarding Chris Chan on a weekly basis. While she had not yet been acquitted of her charges, serious conversations began taking place around June of 2022 regarding potential plans to send Christine home, after a brief stay in a halfway house. Since the only evidence was the phone call from Isabella and both the defendant and alleged victim repeatedly denied that the crime had taken place, prosecutors felt that a full trial wouldn't be worth the effort, so the solution seemed ideal for everyone. There was just one problem though. The court still had a special condition in place that Christine could not live with her mother, and Barbara refused to leave her home.
Barbara, as of yesterday, is not only still alive and well enough, but she is redneck stubbornly still at the Sonichu Temple. Suffice to state, this news has put our body and mind into a bit of a frenzy mental state, that I had to expel the energy and entity of that further frustration.
From the sound of it, Barbara was not doing this in a purposeful attempt to make things more difficult. She was already distressed enough living without her daughter, and now the prospect of leaving the place she had called home for so many years was just a bridge too far. The idea of moving into a retirement community was pitched to her multiple times, but Barb adamantly turned it down. All she wanted was to return to her life with Christine before any of this ever happened, and she didn't appear to understand why that was no longer a possibility. This was a continued frustration for Chris Chan, who wrote about her battle of wills against her mother multiple times within further Goddess Log entries. Her opinions here seem to be mixed.
Deep down, Buddy had actually wanted to return home with Barb still there. Good grief. Frankly, we know to be in Barb's presence again would not only be heavy emotional, but extremely awkward and deeply discomforting, especially with what little of Barbara still remains in Barb.
On top of that, she also vented her feelings regarding her mother's mortality.
Barbara is in her rose chew form/body on the C-197 Earth half, and the human body that lives at the Sonichu Temple and lingering is a partial soul form or shell of herself. We and our body still can't help but weep once again for the pending loss of Barbara's human body.
This was one of Christine's few moments of clarity in a very long time. Despite the layers of lore she had created in order to shield herself from reality, she still, on some level, seemed to understand that once Barbara died, that would be the end. There would be no life eternal as a Rose Chew in Quickville. She would be gone and Christine would be all by herself. Meanwhile, on the internet, the world of Chris Chan was experiencing a brief spike in popularity without her having to do anything at all. In August of 2022, a screenshot of a 4chan green text was posted to Twitter claiming that Christine had escaped police custody during a court hearing by climbing out a bathroom window, and had been at large for 5 hours. People flocked to this story, and many took it at face value since they were so hungry for any new Chris Chan updates. The rumors spiraled from there, as people began reporting that she had joined up with notorious drug lord El Chapo, and the two were headed for the Canadian border. While these claims were quickly debunked, they were treated as gospel at the time due to how widespread the meme became. In fact, to this day, many people still believe the original rumor of Chris Chan escaping police custody, as it continues to be brought up occasionally in discussions surrounding the internet legend. So if you are one of those people, allow me to be the one to definitively tell you, no, Chris Chan never broke out of jail. Since Christine was still locked up and thus unable to take part in any of the discussions surrounding her, it was clear to many that there was a void that needed filling. And if Chris Chan couldn't be on the internet, we could at least have the next best thing. On December 6, 2022, a YouTube user by the name of C-Chan Sonichu Quick uploaded a video claiming to be an old foe from the distant past, Liquid Chris.
I am the true and honest creator of the Sonichu and Rose Chew comics, and I know I haven't made any the YouTube videos in a long time, but there's an explanation to that, but that is not in this video. It shall be in another one.
In this video, he claimed his reason for returning after all these years was to combat the rise of another notorious online personality by the name of Cyrax, who had been referring to himself as the next Chris Chan. Not long after, he posted another video on TikTok with a face reveal, although both of these uploads have since been removed, with only the original YouTube post being properly archived. This alleged return sparked some debate amongst Chris Chan observers, with many disagreeing as to whether or not this was actually the true and honest Liquid Chris. Those who believed him to be a fake pointed to another popular theory that the original Liquid was actually a man by the name of Christopher Duckworth, who had since gone on to become a doctor. There was even a TikTok posted a month prior to this, which seemed to indicate that he had gotten married to Casey, the girl with whom he had trolled Chris Chan all those years prior. None of this can be proven for certain though. The person behind the TikTok account vanished just as quickly as he arrived, and thus has never provided definitive proof that he is the real Liquid Chris. Another major event during this era had very little to do with Christine herself, but it was something she took great joy in. It was around this time that the infamous political streamer Keffals was waging war against Kiwi Farms, a website for which the original intention was documenting and mocking Chris Chan. Keffals managed to successfully get the forum dropped by service providers for a time, something Christine celebrated within the goddess logs upon hearing of it.
Josh Noel Moon had directly attacked a famed enough transgender individual, and they fired back immensely. They reported the Kiwi Farms and Noel, the Kiwi Farms forum site that started purely as a CWC hate forum site. Gone completely clean. Good holy bye. And nothing was backed up from Kiwi Farms, so they can never ever come back with the past hatred and toxicity against me.
Of course, Kiwi Farms eventually came back online and returned to business as usual. This is roughly how things continued for the next year or so. Christine's case was granted continuance after continuance, with multiple ideas being pitched about what exactly to do with her. Based on some of the papers she was using to write pages of the goddess logs, it can be seen that she was being kept in the jail's administrative segregation area for the inmate safety and to ensure the security and control of the facility. Essentially, this means she was being kept away from the general jail population, although for what reason we can only guess. As the months rolled on, Christine became progressively less interested in detailing her day-to-day life in her diary. It's not hard to see why. Her daily routine had become so mundane that there was likely not much left to write about anymore. Later volumes of the goddess logs were filled to the brim with dense Sonichu lore, as that spiraled into being her day-to-day reality. The internet at large also began to lose interest. Aside from her most diehard followers, nobody was really focusing on the CPU goddess's activity anymore. Even avid Christorians were having a difficult time keeping up with her life updates, since courts had been keeping details of the case locked up tight. That's what made the next major update so shocking. On March 27th, 2023, it was reported online that Christine had been released from jail via court order. While this was something that her lawyer and allies on the outside had been working on for nearly 2 years at this point, the news still hit the internet like an unexpected slap in the face. Due to the tight control of information, many people had assumed that the case against Chris Chan was airtight, and thus she would not be seeing the outside world again for a very long time. The main concern shared amongst many onlookers was Barbara's safety, as it was unclear from an outsider perspective where exactly Christine would be staying or how much access she would have to her mother. It was just a matter of waiting to see how things would play out. The Sonichu creator did not return to the internet right away, but that didn't mean she was completely absent from the public eye. On May 1st, images were posted to Reddit and Twitter showing Chris Chan shopping at a Walmart in Midlothian, Virginia. A video was also uploaded to YouTube of her leaving the store. The photographers kept their distance and thus didn't get a chance to speak to the infamous lolcow, as would be the case with many future sightings. This would lead many to call this the Bigfoot Saga, as people were hungry to find out what Christine would be doing with her life post-incarceration. She was also reportedly witnessed climbing into a black van after she was done shopping, although at the time nobody knew where she was staying. Throughout the rest of the month, more and more images were published showing Chris Chan out and about in various Eastern Virginia areas. These were all fairly mundane sightings. She was spotted playing a card game at a hobby shop, walking outside a pizza restaurant, and shopping at a variety of stores. One cashier who spoke with her even posted one of Christine's receipts online, which had been signed J. Christ Chan Sonichu. On another occasion, an image of the Sonichu creator at the River Ridge Mall was posted on Reddit, in which she was seen sitting with two mysterious individuals. It was at this point that some people began pushing back against the rising Chris Chan fascination. It was one thing when she was willingly exposing herself to the internet, but covertly taking photos of her in public struck many onlookers as a bridge too far. They argued that if Christine wasn't actively posting online and was instead trying to live her life in private, those boundaries should be respected. This backlash did not stop a continued stream of new photos from circulating across the web, of course. In June, the Sonichu artist was seen hanging out with an unidentified group of people in Williamsburg. This only caused more of a stir, as now innocent people who had nothing to do with the ongoing saga were in danger of being roped into the vortex of drama they had no knowledge of. For the most part, the identities of these new friends remained a mystery, all except one, that is. The most frequent individual that Christine was seen hanging out with was a young woman who was identified only as Flutter, due to her love of the My Little Pony character Fluttershy. There was some initial concern about her age since she appeared very young, but it has since been established that she is 30 years old. Beyond that though, not much information was known about Flutter beyond the multiple times she was seen walking around in public with Chris Chan, and at the time she was seen as nothing more than a platonic friend. Things continued like this for the next few months as people continued voyeuristically photographing Christine anytime they spotted her in public. While some approached her for a conversation, nothing substantial ever seemed to be revealed. It wasn't until August 8th when a judge officially dismissed the incest charge, putting a final end to the ordeal. The internet now had to sit by and wait with bated breath to find out what Chris Chan would do with her newly gained freedom. Their worst fears seemed to be realized on September 4th, when the self-proclaimed Messiah's car was spotted parked in the driveway of the Sonichu temple. With no way of knowing what was actually going on inside the house, all onlookers could do was pray that it was nothing more than an innocent visit between mother and daughter. The dismissal of the charges marked not only the end of the so-called jail saga, but also a new age of Christery, as the world's most documented person slowly started returning to online life. Much like her public sightings, this was a slow trickle rather than a grand re-entrance. It began with people noticing her Pokemon Go account had been logged into. More interestingly though, on August 16th, Christine began liking a plethora of Twitter posts, causing a massive stir on social media. She also dumped a large number of drawings to her DeviantArt page, although these were uploaded without comment. The best word to describe the vibe around this time would be ominous. Chris Chan had repeatedly made her presence known, but she wasn't speaking a word to anyone. It was as if she was lurking in the shadows, constantly watching and liable to jump out at anyone, anytime. Christine's first public statement, so to speak, happened on September 3rd, when a Twitter user by the name of Helena posted a message she had received from Sonichu's creator, along with a selfie.
Sorry for not responding, but I have been keeping a low profile as possible, and my online return is coming, and I allow you to share this as I know you are likely to do. I also enclosed the following photo. Thank Critical for the really divinely inspired J-Fuel. Be safe and well, you and everyone, with blessings.
And this promise of a return was made good on October 16th, when Christine uploaded her first video to YouTube since her arrest, titled, Jesus Christ Chan Sonichu Prime Resurrected and Returned. While this did appease the people who were starving for new Chris Chan content, it probably wasn't what those who wanted an actual statement on the controversy were hoping for.
On the road to the city of Quickville. City of Quickville. On the road to the city of Quickville. City of Quickville.
Those in the audience craving a more substantial video got something closer to what they wanted the next day when Christine uploaded Setting the Record Straight. There never was any sex involving me in 2021. While this was an attempt to address the arrest and all the speculation surrounding it, for many it still left something to be desired.
So just so y'all know, straightforward and blunt, to the point, the reason I went to jail, the charge I was charged with, I was innocent. There never, ever, 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 ever was any sense between Barbara and I, period. But hey, you're never gonna make me commit suicide, period. And that was the intention that Bella had in all her chopped and screwed up recordings, with all the attention and manipulating me into that. But hey, I foreknew she was going to do that. I tested her. At the time, I treated her like, just as a friend, try to get her to be on the good side. But obviously she failed. But I was proven innocent. And they couldn't place me anywhere, which is why they kept me in jail for so long, because they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know what to do with somebody was freaking autistic that you weren't putting your words in. Ish. They didn't know what to do. They just kept me in jail. They didn't know where to place me. But fortunately, they did know where to place me eventually, so that happened. I'm safe and doing better.
While Christine repeatedly claimed to have been framed and taken out of context by Isabella Janke, to this day she has not been able to explain exactly why she said what she said on the infamous phone call. People also questioned why she had chosen such a distinctive background image for this important video. On Twitter, she explained that it was the Royal Albert Hall for, quote, obvious reasons. With this video, the floodgates were now open, and Chris Chan started posting on the internet again. Her primary outlet was Twitter, where she continually wrote the kinds of ramblings she was best known for, primarily regarding her favorite pop culture franchises and the Dimensional Merge. One thing she seemed particularly hung up on was the newest reboot of My Little Pony, dubbed G5 by fans. Christine had been a huge fan of the previous version of the cartoon, G4, and thus was not fond of this new iteration. But with Chris Chan, it wasn't enough to simply say the show was bad. In her many rants about it, she claimed that G5's existence was somehow destabilizing reality.
MLP G5 does not exist yet in this timeline, period. It should never exist until well after My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 14, Episode 26. Divine forces are at work to make this right, and so you all have the chance to make this easy on yourselves by removing everything MLP G5 and resuming MLP G4 immediately. I have spoken. Please remedy this post-haste and immediately.
Aside from Twitter, in October, Christine announced she would begin live streaming and did so later in the month. Now, at this point, you may be wondering what exactly Chris Chan's living situation had been since leaving jail. Little was known at the time, and even to this day, many aspects of the story are shrouded in doubt. Well, after the release order, she went to live at Gateway Homes, a Virginia nonprofit that offers residential mental health services. Some of the more avid Christorians had already narrowed this down as the most likely possibility, since they had traced all the spots Chris Chan had been cited post-jail to be within a small radius of Gateway's location. After a few months of living with them, though, she was informed that the nonprofit would soon be implementing new guidelines which would complicate the Sonichu creator's ability to stay there. This is where another previously unmentioned aspect of the story comes into play. You see, since late 2020, the business end of Chris Chan's online presence had been managed by a small group of supporters. This mainly involved helping to run her Etsy page and making sure orders went smoothly. But after she got arrested, they were in regular communication with David Halberg to get her out. So when they discovered that Christine's living situation was on shaky ground, they aided her in finding an apartment in Lynchburg, Virginia she could afford to live in on her own. Much like with Gateway Homes though, the sleuths in the Chris Chan community were able to figure this out on their own as well. Using photos from the Sonichu artist's Twitter and screenshots from her live streams, they were able to cross-reference the room interiors with images from Zillow listings to figure out exactly where she was living, proving once again that privacy on the internet does not exist. Regardless, this is where Chris Chan currently resides, regularly live streaming and producing commissioned art and homemade Sonichu medallions for a living. But even this came with its own problems. What must be understood is that Gino Samuel, creator of the YouTube series Chris Chan: A Comprehensive History, was also selling his own 3D printed replica Sonichu medallions on his Etsy page, even including dubious certificates of authenticity. And this was something Christine did not take kindly to. While she didn't speak much about it publicly, her frustration was visible in a tweet from December of 2023, in which she was replying to Gino thanking a fan for purchasing one of his products.
Gino, don't even with the certificate. 3D printed never surpasses the full soul effort in handcrafting. It's not funny.
This objection did nothing to deter the documentarian. In fact, he later expanded his inventory, selling t-shirts which read "Want Woman," identical to the one Christine had worn at one point in time. She could also be seen in the comments of the YouTube community post announcing the item's sale, once again denouncing its existence. There was some debate about the ethics of Gino selling these products. Making a living by thoroughly documenting the life of Chris Chan already struck some people as morally questionable, and they felt that this new business venture was over the line. For his part, Gino did not seem overly concerned by the criticism, flatly stating in a Reddit thread, "You say that as I'm watching the sales roll in. It may not be for you, but it is wanted and liked by others." This continues one of the oldest Chris Chan patterns, that being her hatred of people selling a knockoff versions of her products, first seen in the Jimmy Hill saga almost 2 decades prior.
You want to bake some brownies?
Yeah, we can make some brownies. One stick butter.
Is it very soft?
I'd say decent. Wait, how much of the cocoa powder?
A half cup. We have measurement cups there.
For the cocoa. Mashing the butter. Mashing the butter.
What about a moist critical Charlie?
He's kind of cool, you know. I like the divine peach flavor of G Fuel. There's dragon fruit in that one.
Do you think Charlie has any abilities, supernatural abilities?
You can at least read the vibes and energy of the room and know where he goes based on that. But otherwise, he's just a normal, ordinary dude.
Have any other YouTubers reached out to you that are pretty notable recently?
A lot do, but obviously it's one where I just mainly will go with them based on the vibe and the light power. Obviously, as I mentioned yesterday, in regards to that, white powered and good, then that's one I'll follow. If it obviously feels red and bad, then it's like, stay away from that. And if I misinterpreted that, I do apologize.
It's all good. We'll make the correction.
Because I really do appreciate everybody of all colors, races, and ethnicities. I am not racist.
When you were a child, did you have any sense that you were possibly transgender or identified as a woman?
I felt like I had more feminine tendencies and likenesses, and I just couldn't really identify too much with what is typical with the male or masculine aesthetic. And of course, I do appreciate, you gotta fight your wars, you gotta go out into the battles and whatnot.
Do you think about your father a lot still?
Off and on, yes, in appreciation and whatnot.
So you've come to appreciate him more as time has gone on?
Let's just say between Bob and Barbara, well, flaws and details and yada 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 aside, I feel like, Mr. C was a better parent as opposed to Barbara.
Very insightful. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I think with that, we want to get some brownies?
Yeah.
Let's try out the brownie.
Yeah.
It's alright.
Yeah. Delightful, delicious, doable. As opposed to V, that video game.
It's a pretty good game. I like that one. It's the one where you click a button and the gravity changes?
Yeah.
What is the meaning of life?
I say best described by the upside down face girl from Amusing World of Gumball. It's just it's essentially about the journey and doing things that best feel good with you and all that, and life power and good, and just enjoying life along the way and doing what you can to do good and help others. So yeah.
I could agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
With Chris Chan becoming active online again, and her infamy only having grown, there was a much higher demand for her presence by a wide variety of creators. On November 28th, Keemstar posted a tweet saying that he had reserved a guest spot for her on the next episode of LOLcow Live, a podcast he produces designed to highlight some of the internet's favorite punching bags. Christine refused the invitation and wrote a lengthy statement on Twitter denouncing the very concept.
I am more than aware, as I have made clear, of the likely usage of I as leverage in the popularity of one's content itself, as well as any LOLcow content. I am not a LOLcow, and I feel concern and disappointment with those who sees others in their respective drama and stressful situations as comical. I feel pity for they who do not have empathy upon the pains of others, including myself, as well as not being open for the present and future better individuals they are more than capable of being in light, power, good, and righteousness. I am not the LOLcow that I was mislabeled as back in the late 2000s, as I do not identify as such. We all have our respective situations that should be appreciated and accepted with kindness and understanding.
While she had no desire to interact with Keemstar, there was another YouTuber who Chris Chan was very interested in associating with, Clara Sorrenti, aka Keffals. In October, she had joined the transgender streamer's notorious Catboy Ranch Discord server. Suffice to say, there were less than desirable things going on behind the scenes in this community. It's important to note that Christine did not take part in very much discussion here, though. The only time she was ever actually documented speaking with other users was on January 27th, 2024, when someone asked her about Sonic the Hedgehog lore. Even so, Keffals and Chris Chan were certainly on friendly terms. On January 17th, she was interviewed by the political activist on her YouTube channel. This video received a decent amount of backlash though, causing Sorrenti to set it to private a couple months later. In the months following the release of this video, public perception toward Keffals took a sharp decline. This was not due to her association with Christine though, and her reputation had been rocky long before that for a number of reasons. But the interview certainly didn't help matters either, and today Clara has been essentially run out of the public eye. She locked her Twitter, her YouTube channel became a ghost town, and she is rarely seen on live streams. While most would view this downfall as the natural consequences of her actions, there are others who would assign a much odder, slightly supernatural explanation to the whole thing. You see, in recent years, a pattern has emerged around people who associate with Chris Chan. Anyone who gets too close to her orbit is in danger of being sucked down into it and ending up significantly worse off than when they started. We've seen this happen time and time again, from more recent examples like Isabella Loretta Jenke to all the way back to Megan Schroeder and Michael Snyder. While the degree to which their association with Christine actually had an impact on their quality of life varies, in the past year or so there has been one notable symbol of this trend, the Sonichu medallion. Ever since the beginning of Christine's comics, the neck piece has been shown to hold great power within the lore of the world. As time progressed, it became an iconic image for its association with Christery, and thus was a very popular item when the internet legend began selling replicas of it on her Etsy page. It soon became a bit of a meme for viewers to send the medallions to their favorite, or perhaps least favorite, online personalities. And on more than one occasion, what followed was the complete disintegration of those creators' lives. People truly started taking notice of this trend with streamer Nick Rakita, who on October 14th, 2023, spoke about a mysterious package he had received.
And in it had this burned piece of paper, which I feel like I'm going to get serial rape here. It says, "The stars are aligned. A new host is chosen. Hail unto thee, Nick Chan Rakitachu." And then with that came this. And this was so weird because this came before the mention of Sonic in the trademark dispute that we were talking about last night. A Sonichu medallion has been passed to me. I don't know where this came from. I don't know what it means.
The public became concerned for Nick's well-being following the stream in May of 2024, during which he became incredibly intoxicated. One clip that went particularly viral came toward the end, in which he appeared to be pleasuring himself, although this has been called into question. Things got worse only a couple of days later when Nick and his wife were arrested. According to reports, police raided their home and found cocaine, fentanyl, loose firearms, and ammunition. The pair were quickly detained on charges of second-degree drug possession and child endangerment. While the news of this YouTube lawyer's downfall spread over social media, the old clip of him showing off his Sonichu medallion resurfaced. The eerie letter that accompanied it was of particular interest. What had originally been seen as just an odd joke suddenly took on a much more sinister context. Memes began spreading across Twitter, declaring Nick to be the victim of the so-called Sonichu curse. Chris Chan had been part of internet culture for so long that her influence had spread like mold, infecting anyone who came in contact and dragging them down into the muck. With this new supernatural explanation for Rekida's behavior, people began looking to experts for advice. This is when Chris Bors, otherwise known by the alias The Irate Gamer, entered the picture. While he began his career as a video game critic, Bors has since pivoted his field of expertise to ghost hunting and demonology. That's why he seemed like the perfect candidate to weigh in on the situation.
Him putting a necklace on that somebody sent him that is cursed could have opened the door. If you don't know how to properly cleanse yourself or your space, you know, once these things start to slip in, they can kind of like plant their flag and start to invade that space and wreak all kinds of havoc on their life. I want you to spike one of these meters if you are here now.
These tests ultimately did not turn up anything substantial, but that didn't slow down speculation regarding the curse. The theory soon expanded to more and more creators. In a 2015 episode of his series Bad Unboxing, the YouTuber iDubbbz had also received a Sonichu medallion from one of his fans. In the years following this video's release, the former content cop had thoroughly tarnished his reputation amongst his original fanbase, as well as losing hundreds of thousands of dollars meant for charity from his event Creator Clash 2. Another potential curse victim with much closer ties to Christery is Ethan Ralph, who you may recall as the one who live-streamed Christine's arrest back in 2021. In June of 2024, he was featured on an episode of the podcast, The Biggest Problem in the Universe. During the taping, host Dick Masterson opened up a package that sent the entire studio into a frenzy.
Is a present for you?
I think it's for me. It doesn't have any... Wait, what?
Me?
No. Wait. No, Dick. No.
What is
Don't.
it?
No.
What is it? You're messing up the camera.
Dude, what the fuck?
Not long after that, Ralph posted to Twitter about nearly being involved in a car accident, jokingly wondering if the medallion had something to do with it. Dick Masterson also got into a plethora of internet drama shortly thereafter as well. One last potential example of a curse victim is Mudahar of the channel Some Ordinary Gamers. In July of 2024, he posted a photo of himself wearing the dreaded necklace. This was clearly intended as a joke, mocking the very idea that it might be cursed. But the following months would see both the end of his podcast and the deletion of his Twitter account. Neither of these actions were prefaced with any sort of warning, and thus left people claiming that the Sonichu medallion had claimed yet another career. You'll notice that, during this discussion of Kirsten downward spirals, Christine herself has been entirely uninvolved. That is essentially the state she exists in on the modern internet. In the old days, it was a cycle of trolls prodding her for a reaction that she would give them without fail, leading to the next troll stepping in for their turn. Today, things are different. The Chris Chan legend has expanded beyond her, and new chapters are being written in the story without her having to do a thing. So what is Christine actually up to? Well, she continues posting about Quickfill, The Merge, and My Little Pony. Streaming and selling art on Etsy seems to be providing her a stable income. While they no longer live together, she still continues to visit Barbara on a regular basis, and the two still deny that any wrongdoing had ever taken place between them. But this may not be the end of the Chandler family. Later in 2024, Christine and Flutter were seen together at a mall in Finland, the latter's home country. This sparked mass speculation about what they were doing there, with a prominent theory being that the Sonichu creator was there to ask for her parents' blessing in order to propose. But all of this remained nothing more than rumors as Christine continued to keep the details of her personal life very close to her chest. That is until November 24th, when during a live stream, she seemed to announce that she was soon going to be a parent.
When the child is actually coming into play, or somewhere around that point. Or I just might keep y'all in the dark and let y'all know it wait till after the child is born.
As is often the case with Chris Chan, her choice of words didn't exactly make it clear what she was trying to say. The most obvious interpretation is that she had indeed revealed that she was expecting a child, and since Flutter is Christine's closest female associate, she would be the prime suspect for the mother. As you can imagine, the internet erupted into speculation, with many joking that this child would become the Antichrist. The commotion became so large that Christine was forced to step in and make a statement a few days later, clarifying that she had not actually reproduced. Apparently, in the now infamous livestream clip, she had only been talking about a hypothetical child. Chris Chan has always had a unique relationship with both reality and the English language, and that disconnect between herself and the general public had once again landed her in trouble. Regardless of her next moves, as long as Christine stays on the internet, there will always be people who cannot forgive her for the charges on which she was arrested. But aside from that, things seem relatively stable. But that hardly matters though. Chris Chan is more than just a person now, they are an idea. A specter creeping across the online landscape. A campfire story whispered by social media users in the dead of night. Much like how the line between fiction and reality is blurred for her due to the dimensional merge, so too is the public's view of the fact and fiction of Chris Chan. Even if you don't personally believe that the Sonichu medallion is cursed, that doesn't stop millions of others from not wanting to get anywhere near one. And that is perhaps the best takeaway from all of this. No matter how stable Christine Weston Chandler's life becomes, the legend of Chris Chan will only continue to grow, warp, and become stranger. Because, in a sense, any one of us could be the next Chris Chan. We just don't know it yet.